Considering I became a father quite recently, the concept of missing babies, babies given for sacrifice, babies not finding their parents on time, parents not finding their babies on time, those are topics that hits quite close to home, and that is the premise of this week's latest Tamil film, DNA. Vanakkam and welcome to Cinema Express. This is Avinash Ramachandran, and in this week's video review episode, we are going to look at Nelson Venkatesan's DNA, starring Atharvaa, Nimisha and a bunch of other actors. Nelson's films have always been very, very empathetic. Be it his first film, Urunal Kuthu, or Monster, or Farhana, they all dealt with the empathy towards a lonely person, someone trying their hand in marriage, not even a person in the case of Monster, and almost a conservative woman and friendship with her unlikely, how do I put it, almost pervert. So a lot of these things actually dealt with empathy and the surrounding factors around it. But somehow in this film, DNA, it's easily probably Nelson's most commercial film. And unfortunately, it's these commercial aspects that I have a problem with in this film. DNA is about Nimisha's Divya and Atharvaa's Anand, who are an unlikely couple, but I'm not really, again, a big fan of how they come together, because the film starts off by saying that Anand is quite a loner who is a drunkard, and of course we have the typical Tasmak song which takes us nowhere except back a few years, and then you've got his friends who stand by him no matter what, and a very, very strict parent who is not really happy with how his son's life is going, and rightfully so. Of course, you will get pretty angry if your son turns out to be an Arjun Reddy of sorts. But then nevertheless, we see his fall from not so high. But then we see Divya, who is supposedly having a borderline personality disorder. But we see her as more of a typical loose punnu character. But in this particular film, you really can't call her that, because she is diagnosed as one. And honestly, the problem with this portrayal also is that it narrows down how such people react, and I'm not sure if this is the way we should remember or we should understand how borderline personality disorder works, because it is, of course they say that she goes to therapy, of course they say that she has her own idiosyncrasies, they say that she does a lot of social media activity, and also is an introvert and an extrovert and someone who doesn't understand social cues. But what happens is, if continuously characters are calling her as loose, it doesn't really serve the purpose. But again, there is an idea of why she's being called that, because there is going to be redemption towards the end, and that redemption comes in the form of marriage. It's almost like the age-old trope where when there's a wastrel in the house, the man who's generally the wastrel in the house gets married to somebody who's instilled responsibility into him. But I think this factor, when it's almost like such a wastrel gets married to this kind of a person. It's almost like every single scene which leads up to the marriage, they point the differences out between not so stable man who is into alcoholism, depression, and finds his way out of it through rehabilitation. And then this guy is almost married just because Divya is not really of good place in the mind. So this doesn't really work. Even if you say it happens, I'm not sure if this is how we should remember such an union between two people. But nevertheless, once this happens, once the couple become together, it's a very interesting space and how this works, because we don't really see how Divya navigates through the world of Anand, and neither do we see how Anand understands the world of Divya. And as we see in most of these films, suddenly they are pregnant and they are ready to give birth to a child. Till then, DNA is all about Divya and Anand. But what happens after the birth of the child is where the true story lies. The film is about the old wives' tale. Do you remember how when we were young, we always used to have that the nightmarish idea of some old lady coming and picking us up from nowhere and selling us to anyone who wants us? You know, that kind of a trope. That is back in DNA, and it's very, very scary to see how easy it is to manipulate the system and go and steal children. And see, the thing is, we know it happens. We know this has not been something that's not explored in Tamil cinema, or not we have not seen or not read in the papers. But this is very, very chilling to see. And interestingly, the only big elevation moment in the film is given to the old lady who does this for a living. The way she understands what she does and the way she says why she does it is riveting. And somehow Nelson, who's very, very good with understanding equations and relationships and personal dynamics, does not do that to very good extent in DNA, and that is somehow baffling because he's someone who enjoys these things. Look at Farhan, how he explored the relationship between Aishwarya Rajesh and Jitan Ramesh, or Aishwarya Rajesh and Selvaraghavan. Look at Monster and how he explored the chemistry between S.J. Surya and that rat. And the entire idea of Urnal Kothu, which explored the importance of marriage and the lack of it, or how that shouldn't be the way you understand people or label people as. And even here you have an idea very similar to Urnal Kothu, where it discusses about the labeling of people and the burden the society puts on parenthood, the importance of people wanting to be a father and mother through any means possible. And of course, where this film leads to is not really a spoiler per se. You know this is what's going to happen after a point. But what really didn't work for me in DNA is the fact that these things happen through the most commercial of detours that we don't expect from a Nelson Venkatesan film. For instance, there are 3 fights, which is more than what happened throughout Nelson's filmography. There's one bar song. Actually, there are 2 bar songs, one with Atharvaa dancing for randomly saying stuff about life, love, and women. There's another bar song which features Gayatri, which genuinely doesn't serve any purpose other than, I don't know what purpose it served, because the film would have still been the same without that particular scene. The film also explores the underbelly of the city and talking about how human sacrifices happen, how contract killings happen, how these things are orchestrated from the prison. And the cop played by Balaji Shaktivel is someone who's on the verge of retirement and wants to take Anand along with him to ensure that no stones are left unturned. The investigation is decent, although there are a lot of convenient factors that happen, like the one person the police officer calls up to ask information has the exact information that the people need. And then what happens to the babies, how every link of this chain is found by Anand and Balaji Shaktivel's cop character. These are all very convenient, but it's never not engaging. Every single time you are left at the edge of your seats because you want to know what happened to those kids. You want to know what they are planning with those babies. You want to know how the very, very different links of this chain are put together by someone at the top. While the investigative parts genuinely work for DNA, what really doesn't is the long absence of Nimisha Jain's character. See, the film is called DNA for a reason. Divya should be very, very prominent, and considering the pedigree of Nimisha, it is expected that the character would have more things to do. It is relegated to a very one-note character. Probably it's the weakest role that she has played, despite having the prominence, despite having a role that could have been so much more. Honestly, I was thinking if the role was supposed to be someone with borderline personality disorder, but even if that wasn't the case, the emotions that the mother goes through when the child is missing would have still been the same. There is an arc of mental health being discussed in the film, but I don't think it really serves its purpose entirely because it's left halfway and to become a very compelling investigative thriller. But somewhere down the line, we forget that Divya is an important part of this film. Similarly, even Anand doesn't really get enough scenes to establish the fact that he is someone who is also missing his son. But the role gives Atharvaa a lot to do. There is a lot of sentiment, there is a lot of action to do, there is a lot of romantic gestures that he's very, very comfortable in. It's almost like this is a showreel for Atharvaa, and he does a very, very good job at it. Another undoing of DNA is the fact that it has a very largely generic villain with a very, very normal backstory. Of course, you can argue that not every villain should have a great backstory that makes you understand why he does what he does. A missing child, the police being involved, and the protagonist going in search of his son all around the city is not an entirely new trope. We have seen this being explored in a completely different way in Anurag Kashyap's Ugly, which was a stark reminder of the ugliness of our hearts, of how society works. In this film, it's not so much ugly per se, it's more of the goodness of people, everyone wanting to, hope that everything goes well. There is one scene where Nimisha and Atharvaa, who have been given a different child, has to understand what to do with that particular baby. It's very heart-wrenching to understand how a mother's mind would work. You know that that's not your child, but it's crying for food. What would you do? And you know that's not your child. It's been with you for a couple of weeks. you're not sure if you would find your own child. What would you do if the real parents come? A lot of such compelling ideas are there in the film, and they are actually touched upon very, very subtly. It's wonderful to see how these small things work. And I think, again, as Nelson's strength lies in human emotions. You see how these scenes are wonderfully evolving. The way they come into terms with their missing child, the way they understand that someone's actually missing another child, and they have to understand how parents would react to it. The strict father who once cursed his son, coming to terms with what really the power of words, does karma exist? But then, why did Nelson decide to go the whole 3 songs, 4 fights, way to get to the bottom of DNA is probably an important question to understand. Hope you like this video review episode, and if you did, please like, share and subscribe to Cinema Express. Do leave your comments on how you like the film and how you like this episode. Till we meet in the next video review episode, this is your friendly neighborhood critic, Avinash Ramachandran, signing off. Tata!